Okay, we're going to continue with chapter 41 now. And so the teeth are an important part of the system in mammals. And so that's kind of where it starts, up in the mouth. And so your dentition is sort of a reflection of what it is that you eat in your evolutionary history, such that, of course, if you're a carnivore, you have these large canine teeth, which are there for grabbing onto something and holding onto it firmly and not letting go, whereas your horse has these flattened teeth because their job is they basically just rip up grasses. They don't have to really grip things, so they don't have canine teeth. We have a hybrid system, I guess you could say, in that we generally have these flattened teeth, but we've got these relatively small canine teeth. And molars, of course, because we are omnivores and we eat a little bit of everything. The one curious one up here is the gorilla, because as you can see, this gorilla has these rather scary-looking canine teeth here, but gorillas are herbivores. So why is it that they have these big, scary canine teeth? Well, it could be they evolved from ancestors that were meat eaters, and indeed their cousins out there, chimps. Chimps will eat some meat, but we don't really consider them, even chimps, to be carnivores. And so it could be that gorillas have these big, scary teeth as sort of a defensive mechanism or a way to intimidate their competitors, perhaps. Also, as we move further down in the gut, that's a reflection of what it is you eat, and again, your evolutionary history. So carnivores tend to have an extensive small intestine, not much of a large intestine. That small intestine has to do a lot of work to digest that meat that you have chewed up and has gone through your stomach to absorb all those nutrients. But if we look at this herbivore, this koala bear here, relatively small intestine, but at the end they have this large cecum, and this cecum, which you can see is relatively small in the carnivore, is this sac that extends off basically at the very beginning of the large intestine. And essentially this is a sac, if you will, that contains this material that has already worked its way through the system and basically allows it to digest some more, gives it more time. The herbivore is eating plants, of course, and plants don't have a lot of nutrition, and they relative to meat, and they tend to be very tough, fibrous materials, and so it takes more time to digest and extract the nutrients from this plant material. And a large intestine here, rather extensive reabsorption of certain nutrients, and also important in reabsorbing water. Another adaptation that some herbivores have, known as the ruminants, cow being a good example, they have the four-chambered stomach, where they, of course, eat some grass, chew it up a bit, swallow it, and it goes to the rumen first, this largest of the chambers. And in both the rumen and the reticulum, these are basically large fermentation chamber where there are a whole host of microbes in there that are digesting this food. Some of them have enzymes that allow them to digest cellulose, and so this chamber is where this food is worked on by these microbes. Now you notice after the reticulum, the food, the red line, purplish red line here, is the food, this partially digested food is regurgitated. And so that is what we call the cud that cows chew on, or after they've partially digested it. So they'll chew on their cud for a while, then they re-swallow it, and it goes to the omasum and the abomasum. And here, these chambers are more like our stomach in that particularly the abomasum, has a relatively low pH, and it's where the food is further ground up, if you will, and chewed and digested before it enters the intestine, where the bulk of the absorption of the nutrients occurs. So homeostasis, as we've talked about, is an important phenomenon for organisms, maintaining stable conditions, and it's no different when it comes to your food. And so in particular, you take these macromolecules, you break them down, and carbohydrates and other types can be broken down into these simple molecules that can be used as source of energy, and we typically think of glucose as the primary one that you want to use in cellular respiration. And so your body basically monitors glucose levels. And so if glucose levels in your blood start to get a little too high, your pancreas secretes insulin, and insulin promotes the storage of this glucose in your liver in the form of glycogen, and then also in general in the body cells. And it sort of controls the rate at which the insulin is being released into the bloodstream and helps you store it. On the other hand, if your blood sugar levels get too low, over here, then your pancreas releases a compound called glucagon, and glucagon stimulates the release of glucose from your liver, that is, converting the glycogen into the glucose. Again, ideally maintaining relatively stable conditions. This is of where diabetics have problems, in that they do not regulate their blood sugar levels as well as they should due to insufficient amounts of insulin or defective insulin that doesn't control their blood sugar levels so well. Your appetite is controlled by certain compounds. The ones in red here are involved with what we might call negative feedback. That is, they suppress appetite. This green line here, ghrelin, that's the one that stimulates appetite. So if your stomach is relatively empty, you get a chemical signal up in the brain that says you're hungry and stimulates eating, and these others suppress appetite. So leptin, for example, is released by adipose tissue, and if you have a lot of adipose tissue, it's supposed to release this and sort of suppress the appetite to a certain extent. Now, there can be genetic problems, and that is, you can have defective forms of some of these compounds such that they don't work so well and you don't receive that negative feedback to the degree that you should, and this can cause problems with overeating and the phenomenon of obesity, which, as we know, is being overweight. And so, as I just said, this can be due to some genetic reasons. We also, as a species, have a good ability to put on weight. And this is part of our evolutionary past, when in our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they would have periods of time during the year when there was, or even particular years when there may not be as much food as there was otherwise. And so the ability to put on weight and store this excess food, this excess calories you get as fat, was an adaptation for those lean times, to help survive those lean times. Other species have this characteristic as well to a certain extent. Think of bears. Bears will eat a whole bunch during the spring, summer, and fall so that they can survive hibernation, which they will lose a significant amount of their weight during hibernation. These petrels here, the baby birds, put on an incredible amount of weight when they're young, in case there is a shortage of food, and also to help stimulate growth. So when they put on all this mass early on, it'll help them grow a little later on. So this phenomenon of being able to put on weight to survive these lean times, it was quite adaptive in the past, but we have the question of, is it in modern society almost maladaptive because we have so much food available to us year-round, and also foods that are high in fat, high in calories, high in sugar. And again, our bodies have the ability to take these things, these energy-dense molecules, and store them efficiently as adipose tissue. Now, clearly, this varies amongst people, but again, as this kid shows, he has put on quite a bit of weight, and so his diet is probably not ideal. And of course, this could be considered maladaptive in that being perennially overweight can cause certain types of health issues, compromise your health in certain ways. Okay, that's it for chapter 41.